Hello there. Welcome to our financial aid presentation for this evening. Just waiting to let a few more people in and then we will get started. I appreciate you tuning in, and we will have this presented as a recording, and I'll be sending that out. So if you know somebody who couldn't make it tonight, that is okay. We will have this recorded and then sent out to all of our Cardinal Mooney families, or provide the link as to where you can view this meeting. Okay, on my end, it says it's 5 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. Along with the college application process, a significant part of the process for completing your applications, and in consideration of the cost of funding your child's education or your education, you definitely want to consider filling out and applying for financial aid. It is really something that we encourage you to do no matter what your financial status is, what you think you can afford. Families are often surprised by what financial aid they can get. And so, but you cannot receive financial aid from a college unless you have put out or gone ahead and put together that application. So I have tonight with us Gabriela Vega. Gabriela is affiliated with the University of South Florida here in Sarasota. She works with the financial aid office, and she partners with me every year when we talk about the financial aid process. And for tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about what's available, how do you actually go through that application process, what happens after you apply for financial aid, a little bit of the bright futures, our Florida prepaid programs and how that works within the financial aid process or funding your education and other aid programs. Okay, so tonight, let's start with Gabriela. If you could talk to us a little bit about the different types of financial aid, and then we'll get into the more specifics of applying for the FAFSA.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Anne. So tonight we're going to speak a little bit about the types of financial aid. And by the way, Anne is correct. You do need the FAFSA for a lot of financial aid. Federal, state, and institutional aid requires that you submit a FAFSA. And to be considered for a lot of this financial aid, you do also need that FAFSA. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the merit-based financial aid. Merit-based is going to be your scholarships. They're going to be your bright futures. They are based on your talent, on your GPA, your SAT scores and ACT scores, private and community scholarships as well. So those are going to be your merit-based scholarships. Some of them do need a FAFSA. Some of those do not require a FAFSA. Now, the need-based, that's going to always require you to have a FAFSA on file because need is determined by the FAFSA. So grants, for the most part, grants are free money. Okay, so whenever you see the word grant, it's a gift aid. Federal Work Study is a federal work study program where you work to earn funding for school, and then also the need-based subsidized loans that the government offers. The non-need based, which basically indicates that the unsubsidized loans and the parent plus loans, those do not need to show need. You just need to have a FAFSA on file to receive those. And I will talk about sub and unsub loans later on.
Okay, and I'll just interject too. A couple of things is, first of all, as an applicant to any college, you are evaluated for any just automatic scholarships based on, as you indicated, the GPA and or test scores if they are factoring in test scores. So oftentimes students are surprised when they get that letter of admissions and acceptance, and then they say, and I've been offered a scholarship, I didn't even apply for one. So that is kind of an automatic consideration and sort of a separate piece from the financial aid. But some colleges will ask you to ensure that you have that FAFSA completed, because they won't then go ahead and award you additional scholarships and additional information or additional funds without that FAFSA. And the other thing I was going to say is that there are oftentimes private scholarships that are need-based, local community scholarships that do ask for the final page or the proof that you've submitted the FAFSA in order to get that additional outside scholarship. So I just wanted to sort of tag on to that. So go ahead, Gabrielle.
Yes, that's very good information. That is true. The merit-based scholarships, a lot of times they're awarded out of the Office of Admissions, okay? And basically, when you submit an admissions application, they will consider you automatically based on your GPA and SAT scores, ACT scores that we receive from the high schools. So let's talk about the cost, because there's some indirect costs and direct costs. The direct costs are always going to include your tuition and fees. Basically, what your tuition and fees are is the cost per credit hour, or the number of credit hours that you enroll for in per semester, and the fees attached to those tuitions. You also
Want to go?
you're going to look at your direct costs as your I believe it's your housing is going to be your as well as your, I think there were two other things.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I went back.
That's okay.
I went
That's okay.
ahead.
Those are your direct costs. Your indirect costs are always going to be something like your transportation, something that you're going to need to travel to go to school, a car, gas, insurance payments. Those are always going to be your indirect costs, okay, associated. Your direct cost is always going to be your housing, your tuition and fees. Those are going to be your direct costs that if you're going to be living on campus, that's going to be part of your direct cost. If you're not going to be living on campus and you're going to be staying at home, then the cost is not going to be there because your parents already pay for your shelter at home. So those are some of the direct costs. Now, the expected family contribution is actually derived from the FAFSA. So this is actually something that the government, it's a methodology that they have. And so you put in all your family information, you put in all your income taxes your parents paid, and they give you what is called an expected family contribution. It stays the same throughout any college and is calculated using the federal formula. Now, this is important because the expected family contribution is what the government thinks that your parents can actually reasonably pay towards your education. So you can go to the next slide and I can show you how that works into the total cost. So what financial aid need means is basically what we do is we determine this by subtracting the expected family contribution from the cost of attendance, and that gives you your financial need. The financial need is the amount that the financial aid office will need to meet in order for you to be able to afford college. Okay, so we take the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution, and we get a financial need, and that's what needs to be met by the financial aid office with different awards, different types of financial aid that I mentioned earlier.
And when do you learn about what your financial aid package is? When would what would that time frame be if you're applying to a school?
So it depends on a lot of different things, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slides. So the need varies by school and cost. So that means that if your school costs more than $10,000, your need is going to be bigger, only because they're subtracting your expected family contribution from a higher cost. Okay, so your need is going to be bigger. If the cost is lower for the school, then your need is going to be less based on that. So it varies based on the college that you attend and the cost to go there and attend there. Go to the next slide. So let's talk about how we apply for financial aid. The first thing you must do as a student, you have to apply for an FSA ID, and you go to fsaid.ed.gov. The student will need to actually create their own FSA ID with their own personal email, their own personal social security number, and their date of birth. That is very important that you understand this, because it is not the parent, it is you, the student, that has to create one. Now, the parent will need to have one as well, but they will do theirs separately on fsaid.gov so that they can sign your FAFSA electronically. So the student will create their own FSA ID, and the parent will create their own FSA ID. And you need this again just to sign the FAFSA electronically. And you also will only need it once. Once you log in into FAFSA, the new FAFSA will allow you to use your FSA ID when you log in for everything. When you download your taxes from the federal government, or when you at the end, when you're ready to sign the FAFSA, is going to just ask you a question, and you're going to be done with the signature page. So just very, very important here and critical. Parents do their own FSA ID, and the student does their own FSA ID with their own information.
Now, if a parent already has a student in college and they've already done a FAFSA and created a FAFSA ID, do they need to create a whole new one for their next student, or can they have their students, the next sibling going off to college, work off of one that they've already created?
So the parent can use the same FSA ID to sign the FAFSAs for all their children. Just one FSA ID is required.
Great.
And this is basically the website where you go, fafsa.gov, okay? Do not go anywhere else. Do not go to fafsa.com. Do not go to fafsa.org. Do not go there. Just go, this is a government website. So go to fafsa.gov, and you'll be able to enter on here to be able to apply for your FAFSA for 22-23. Now, if you're starting in the summer, because a lot of students actually start the summer that they graduate from high school, you're going to be able to do the FAFSA before that year, okay? So we're on the 21-22 right now. So that's the one you will be doing if you start this coming summer.
And
But
what
if you
if
start,
students don't know if they're starting? Because oftentimes colleges, especially in the state of Florida, even if you apply for fall, they will offer you summer, whether you've indicated that or not. So how would you navigate that?
so that's a very good question. What you want to do is just complete both FAFSAs. If
Okay.
you have in your mind that you might be attending college the same summer that you're graduating, you want to go ahead and complete both FAFSAs, the 21-22 and the 22-23.
Okay, perfect.
So every year, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Every year.
So every year, beginning October 1st, the FAFSA becomes available. So guess what? 22-23 FAFSA is available right now. It became available on the 1st. So you want to start doing your FAFSA now. Yes, you're going to be doing it 9 months in advance, and that's okay. A lot of schools have a priority deadline. So you want to get that completed and submitted. You're going to be using income from 2020. So that tax return has already been completed and it's already been processed by the federal government. So you either have a copy of your tax return, or the federal government has a copy for you, and you can use the data retrieval tool to download it into your FAFSA.
And is this safe? Because you're talking about a lot of information, a lot of privacy concerns. How is your information protected?
So this is the federal government. So they have very good protection, privacy information on there. Yes, there's risk, but there's also the federal government who's protecting your information. That's the only way you can actually submit a FAFSA. So you can always call the federal government and ask them. I mean, they can actually give you information over the phone as to how do they actually keep your information secure. But rest assured that this has been for many years, the FAFSA has been the national application for all students, and there's never been a breach. But um, not lately with all those things going on. But like I suggest that you call the federal government if you feel unsure about submitting your FAFSA because of security reasons. But I can guarantee you, I've been working 25 years for financial aid, and we've never heard of anything like that happening.
Okay, great. And then if you have, I know you're about to talk about deadlines and how important it is to do this early. If a student's list varies throughout the year and throughout their journey as an applicant, and they are taking schools off or adding schools, is that something you'll be addressing, or can we address that now?
I'm going to be addressing that, but we can
Okay.
certainly talk about that.
Okay.
Basically, what happens is the FAFSA has, I believe it's 10 places to put in 10 different schools on there. If, let's say, for whatever reason, you put 10 schools and you feel like you have two more, you can always have that FAFSA process with those 10 schools. And then later on, when it's being processed, you can go back into the FAFSA, make a correction, and remove one of the schools and add another school so that that school will also receive your FAFSA. That's the way you go about doing that. Now, the priority deadlines is very important that you pay attention to this. This is very critical. For most schools, they will have a priority deadline. And what that means is that they have free funds or grants institutionally that they have, but it's first come, first serve. And so they give you a priority deadline to submit your FAFSA. For USF, is January 1st of 22. We want you to have your FAFSA processed and completed before that day or by that day to be able to be considered for these free grants and free funds. So you want to make sure, because sometimes students don't realize this, but even if you meet the requirements for a grant, but you do not meet the deadline, you do not get considered for that grant. So it's very important that you do meet the priority deadlines.
Okay.
And here's where you want to take a picture. And the reason for that is because I've already talked about this, but this is what FAFSA you want to submit for the year that you start. So it goes by semester. So if you start in the fall of 21, you need the FAFSA for 21, 22, and it's going to ask you for income for 2019. But if you're going to start the summer of 2022, you also need the 21, 22 FAFSA, which asks for income for 2019. But if you're going to start in the fall of 22, you will need the 22, 23 FAFSA, and it will ask you for income for 2020. Okay, so make sure that you know that. And basically, that's what it says at the bottom. Is if you're starting in the summer, make sure you complete the prior year FAFSA, which is the 21, 22 as well. So I would do both. If you don't know, if you're in doubt, just do both. And yes, when you try to submit the FAFSA and you want to go ahead and start answering the questions, one of the questions is going to be about citizenship. And either you're a citizen or you have a passport, or you're an eligible non-citizen, you have a permanent residency. Okay, and these are some of the eligible citizenship statuses that you can be and still qualify for federal aid. Some of the things that we want to talk about when we talk about the FAFSA, some of the mistakes that we make. There's a lot of students that make mistakes like this, and that's why I was making very sure that your FSA ID is yours and that your parents is theirs, because sometimes the parent will get on the FAFSA and start applying as themselves for you. And that would be a no-no, because the parent would be acting as the student. And so it's not going to be your application, it's going to be your parents' application, because it's going to ask them, what is your name, what is your date of birth, what is your social security number? And if the parent enters that information for them, then it's their application. So you want to make sure that you, the student, is completing the FAFSA with your information, your FSA ID, your date of birth, and your social security number. Make sure that when you're they're going to be asking you a question about marital status for the parents. If you're divorced, you're divorced. But if you're remarried, now when you're submitting the FAFSA, then you will write down that you're remarried, and you will put in your your step parent or your stepfather with your mother or your dad. Okay, so you have to include you if your parents remarried, both of your parents, even if it's a stepfather or stepmother. Okay.
So you're not going off of just one parent. You owe, if that parent claims you as their dependent, but they've remarried, are you still including that information?
You're including both parents if they're remarried.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Both of the incomes are reported, the untaxed income, federal taxes paid. This is not the same as the withheld taxes, so make sure you pay attention. When you go through the FAFSA, when they ask you for these questions, it will tell you if you're using your paper tax return to complete it, which number to look on your tax return to put that figure on the FAFSA, okay? So pay close attention to that. If you're using their data retrieval tool, you don't even have to think about it because the data information gets downloaded and it goes directly where it belongs.
So the data
The
retrieval tool is really the best bet in making sure your information is
is
correct. And
correct.
you can do that because you've already submitted that and it's already, okay, perfect.
That is correct. Data retrieval is always the best thing to use if you can. The household size, don't be confused. This is just how many people are in your household, how many people your parents support in your household, including yourself, and any siblings that are going to other colleges as well. It's going to ask you for the household size and the number of people in college. So make sure that you understand that and you put in the correct amounts. Um, Parents must provide parental information. A lot of students think because they live on their own, they work on their own, and they pay for their own rent. If they're not 24 years old yet, they're still dependent on the parent, and the parent has to provide the information on the FAFSA. A lot of parents may say, "Well, I don't claim my child. Why should I include my information?" Because the federal government will only allow students who are 24 years old or older as independent students. So before that, students are considered dependent unless there's circumstances beyond their control. They do not allow them to submit parental information. And so the parent is the biological or adopted parent, married, remarried parents, parents living together. If your parents are you're not married, but they're been living together, they are reported on the FAFSA as partners, and they both report their information. Um, Not considered parents. This is very important. Legal guardians, grandparents, foster parents, aunts or uncles, they're not considered your parents, even if you've been living with them for a long time. The only way they can be your parents is if they have adopted you. If they have adopted you, then they are considered your parents, and then you will put them on the FAFSA. If they have not adopted you, then you will be considered more like an independent student, and that's where the special circumstances comes in, and that's where the FAFSA has a question on there that says, will you be able to provide parental information? If you say no, then you can submit what we call a dependency override petition. So this is what happens after you apply, you submit your FAFSA, and ask this question earlier, what happens to, how do I get notified? So basically what happens is once we receive your FAFSA, you've been admitted to the university, your FAFSA has been evaluated, when you completed and submitted all the required documentations, then we send you what is called an award letter. Award letter basically tells you how much you're going to be receiving. It's called a financial aid package. And the package basically tells you, okay, you're going to be awarded a grant, a scholarship, a loan, all that information that you could be eligible for. It will also tell you about the rights and responsibilities that you have and the terms and conditions that you will have to meet to be able to continue to receive this financial aid throughout the year. So that's basically how you get a package in the mail. Typically, you will be emailed this package, this award letter, once you've been admitted to the university. Typically, we start doing that at the beginning of December when we start sending out award letters to students.
And also, if I can add, oftentimes you will actually see this after you submit your application. Colleges will give you a login to create a portal for their specific web page or college specific application. It's a status check where you can go in and check to make sure that all of your materials have been submitted, that the college has received everything. But it's not uncommon for that also to be a place where once it will say view your admissions decision, sometimes you can see that right in the portal where it'll say, review your financial award information. So that's another place where you can find that information. It doesn't typically come at the same time as the admissions decision. A scholarship consideration from which you've been awarded as an applicant may be shown sooner than the financial aid package. So oftentimes I remind seniors and families, just wait a little bit because this process oftentimes comes out a few weeks after. But you should have that before the end of April for any decision, because the national reply date to let a college know if you're coming is May 1st, and that award package should be present, and you should know what those terms are before you accept any offer of admissions.
So this is where you evaluate your package, because you've applied to several schools and you've been admitted to several schools. You will receive award letters from all the schools, and you want to sit down with your parents and review what have you been offered. What is the best thing about this award letter? How much does it cost me to go there? Realistically, am I going to be able to afford to go to this school based on what they're awarding me? And then you want to review your grants versus your loans. A loan is a loan, okay? Don't get confused. A grant is free money. A loan is something you have to pay back. So you have to make sure that you're looking at any awards on your award letter that say loans, because you want to make a determination based on, those funds. Understand the terms and conditions, like Ann said, and some of those awards that you've been awarded are renewable. Some of those will be scholarships, like she said. A lot of those are admission scholarships that come in a separate letter from the Office of Admissions. When they send you your congratulations letter, you've been admitted here, we're also offering you this scholarship based on your merit. And so that's going to be something that you want to take a look at and decide, which school do I want to go to, which one is going to offer me the best package, and which one is going to cost me less.
Okay, so I'm going to just kind of take over a little on this Bright Futures, and then Gabriella, if there's something that I miss here. We at Cardinal Mooney encourage our seniors to apply for the Bright Futures, even if you don't have all the elements at this time. The Bright Futures application is open now. Years ago, you used to have to do the FAFSA with the Bright Futures. They are two totally separate application processes. The Bright Futures, you will do that through the Office of Financial Aid through Florida. I have sent out that link to everybody. I can get that to you again. Right now, these are the qualifications for the Florida Bright Futures program. If you are around a 3.0 at this time, even if you're a 2.8 something or a 2.9, I encourage everyone to still apply. If your test scores are not completely where they need to be, I encourage you to apply, because particularly in light that a lot of seniors during their senior year are taking a lot of rigorous or weighted classes, and by the end of the senior year. So even though you're applying now, your Bright Futures qualification is validated 2 times a year, once at the January term and then the second at the end of the year. So it is possible for students who are just right on that cusp, even though it's a recalculated GPA of your core classes, sometimes students find that they are able to eke out that medallion level. And then for the testing, even if your testing is not where you want it to be and you're applying to a college and you know you can gain admissions more than likely with a lower test score than the Bright Futures qualification, you do still have through the end of your senior year to test for Bright Futures, and all of the Bright Futures qualifications will use a super score. So this is really important, and it's not uncommon for my seniors to test or still maintain or continue with their testing in the spring, March, April, May, June, just for their Bright Futures qualifications, just trying to make sure that they are eligible and ready. So this is how the award amount would be if you are at that higher level with the community service hours, the highest test scores. You would be eligible for the academic scholars. And then if it is for the medallion level, a little bit lower, but the full academic scholars award is 100% of the tuition, and then a stipend, right? Correct, right, Gabrielle? I think for books, a small stipend comes with that as well.
Well, actually, the legislation did not approve that for 21, 22, or 22, 23.
Oh,
So yeah.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's a shame, but still, this is a great value. So that I was not aware of. Now, the Bright Futures will work to that 100% tuition rate of any of our Florida state universities. Often the Florida private schools will take up to the state tuition rate, and so that the Bright Futures can be used at the state tuition rate at the in-state private schools. Is that correct, Gabriella?
That is correct. They only pay the public school amounts.
And
What
oh, go ahead. Yeah, please.
I just wanted to mention that the application website you guys see right there at the bottom, www.floridastudentfinancialaid.org, that is the website that you go to submit your Bright Futures application. And you can actually do that now because it becomes available as well during October 1st, just like the FAFSA. And you want to go ahead and do that now, like Ann said, even if you don't know that right now you don't meet all the requirements, you will be working to meet those before you graduate. So submit the application as soon as possible.
Yes, and so this was the medallion level that I shared, the difference between the two. And a lot of students and families ask me, what do I have to do beyond the application? And to match, do I have to send test scores to the state? Do I have to send the community service hours? So the answer is no. The most important thing is that you must report your student's social security number to us, to our registrar's office. We ask that you don't email or that you don't have it on a piece of paper. We just prefer that for your privacy and for your protection that you call that into us. We are taking that information through the end of October because we want to make sure that we get everybody all matched. But that is how we do the matching. And then we match your social security number to your Bright Futures application, to your test scores. We enter your student's academic record. We validate your student's community service hours. So really beyond the application on that Florida financial website, we do all the work behind the scenes to make sure that you are all ready for your Bright Futures.
Can I just say something about the social security number?
Yeah.
Is critical again. that you include your correct social security number, because it will create so many problems for you. Here's the scenarios. You put in a social security on your application for admissions that did not match the social security number that you gave the Florida Bright Futures application, that may not match the high school social security number you provided. So that's going to create a lot of problems when you come to college, because you're not going to have your Bright Futures ready, because we could not download your Bright Futures because your social security number is not correct somewhere. So you want to make sure that when you submit your social security number to your high school, to the or to USF or to any college, or to the state of Florida for Bright Futures up for the Bright Futures application, that you're using the same social security number for all three. So be careful when you input your social security number.
Yeah, that's great advice. And we have had that situation occur. Sometimes even spelling your name incorrectly, putting a nickname. So we really want you to make sure that you're really doing your due diligence. You're going to go into that financial aid website, that Florida financial aid website. You're going to do a kind of a two-step process. The first, creating your account. Then they will give you a login to proceed with the rest of the application. It is a very brief application, but that is certainly very good advice. And we definitely want to make sure that there aren't any errors, especially when we're trying to match. Maybe you want to go ahead and talk about the Florida prepaid for us.
Sure. The Florida Prepaid program is basically bought by your parents or someone in your family for you, and it could be just a tuition plan, local fees, dormitory plan. And so when you actually attend the university that you're going to be attending, that university will require you to either bring in your Florida Prepaid card or do it automatically. We do it automatically. Once you become our student and you enroll with us and we know that you're enrolled, we automatically bill Florida Prepaid for your courses. Now, if you do not want to use Florida Prepaid, you can always tell us in writing. We have a form to not bill Florida Prepaid at that time, because we do have students that receive scholarships, they receive Bright Futures, and they don't need to use their Florida Prepaid, and that is okay as well. However, if you want Bright Futures for us, Florida Prepaid, we're going to automatically bill Florida Prepaid. Now, also note that a lot of plans that you purchase may not include every fee that is associated with the tuition. So there may be a amount of tuition that is not covered by Florida Prepaid. Typically, those are really small, but you want to make sure you pay attention to that as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, the Florida Bright Futures will work within the state of Florida. The Florida prepaid program works within the state of Florida, but there are also many institutions outside of Florida that will work with your Florida prepaid. Now, not exactly to the rate and covering everything, but if you have the Florida prepaid and you're considering an out-of-state institution, you should contact that Office of Financial Aid directly of that institution and inquire if that school is a school that works in any capacity with the Florida prepaid program. So just to kind of clarify the difference, because sometimes students feel Florida Bright Futures is specifically for the state of Florida, but Florida Prepaid, although it is specifically for the state of Florida, there are several institutions that we have come across that will work with you on that. So I always just suggest that when in doubt, contact the Office of Financial Aid directly for any questions on that. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so yes, you can actually receive both. We get a lot of questions about, well, if I get Florida Bright Futures, if I get Florida Prepaid, am I going to get both, or am I just going to get one? You get both because you actually earn both. If you earn your Bright Futures, and if your parents purchase your Florida Prepaid, then you will receive both. Typically for us, we disperse financial aid in one lump sum. And so it goes in, it pays your tuition or what you owe the university, and then whatever is left over is refunded to the student. So you can get both, yes. Federal work study, let's talk about a little bit about federal work study. Federal work study is just funding that's awarded to you, and it could be part of your package, okay? A lot of students receive federal work study. There's a question on the FAFSA they will ask you, are you interested in receiving federal work study? And all it is an amount that's awarded to you based on need, and you work for it. So basically you find a job on a campus that is called federal work study, and then it's allocated, the federal work study that we awarded you is allocated towards that, and you get paid out of that allocation.
Perfect.
The difference between loans, I spoke about subsidized and unsubsidized. The subsidized loan, basically the government pays the interest for you while you attend school. So you want to be enrolled in school, obviously. And so while you're enrolled, you do not pay any at all interest on a subsidized loan. Versus the unsubsidized loan, which is a loan that the government does not pay your interest for you. It will be added to the principal while you're in school. However, neither of these two loans become due until after you graduate from college. So you don't go into repayment until 6 months after you graduate from college, or you drop out of school, or you go below half-time. So you want to pay attention to these loans. If you ever are in a bind and need a student loan, I do not recommend them, but if you need one, the subsidized is the better loan if you were going to receive a student loan that you have to pay back. And then the FAFSA, remember, it's free. Do not pay anybody. Do not go to any website. They will ask you to put in your credit card. The FAFSA is free. It actually stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So do not pay anyone to do that for you. If you need assistance, just contact any Office of Financial Aid. They will be able to assist you. Pay attention to the deadlines. Priority deadlines are very important. Everyone qualifies for something. I hear a lot of students, I don't submit a FAFSA because I do not qualify for anything. The worst that can happen when you submit a FAFSA is that the only thing you could be eligible for are unsubsidized loans. You could be making $1 million and still qualify for an unsub loan. And just know that every year you have to resubmit a FAFSA. So every year submit a FAFSA for you if you're interested in receiving financial aid for that year.
Perfect. Okay, so that's basically it. I will just stick around for a minute if anybody has any questions they want to put in the chat real quick. The FAFSA has lots of contact and support directly if you go onto their website. You can call them at any time. It's best that you do for some of those direct questions. I'm always here to help you to answer some of those questions, but sometimes with some of those technical issues you may be having or questions specific where you don't want to share information with me, I will probably most likely direct you right to contacting somebody directly at the FAFSA. I definitely want to encourage everyone again who thinks they may be near qualification or already qualified for the Bright Futures. You absolutely should be going in, doing that application, and contacting us here with your Social Security number so we can match that. And I agree with Gabriella that I always suggest, many families will tell me, I don't think that I'm going to qualify for anything. Should I even bother? And I always say yes, because sometimes, first of all, we never know, our situation changes once you've started that FAFSA. Every year you have the opportunity to update. So if this year you don't qualify for much, maybe next year your circumstances will change and you've already begun that process. You both have your IDs, and it is really a good thing to get that established moving forward. I'm just going to check to see if there are any questions in the chat. I don't see anything, so I'm thinking that we are all good. Gabriella, do you have anything you wish to say before we end this meeting?
Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. We have our telephone number there. We were more than happy to answer any financial aid questions. If you have any personal, I know a lot of students have a lot of personal questions that you do not want to just speak out in front of everyone. So you can call us directly and it'll be confidential. Um, Also make sure that you know, because this is important, that because of COVID and a lot of times students and parents have lost jobs or had a decrease in income, you can always submit your FAFSA with the information they are requesting. But if that information is no longer true, you can always submit what we call a professional judgment, or at USF we call it a change in circumstances, where you would have to contact the financial aid office where you're going to be going to school. And if your parents or you had a change in income, a decrease in income, we can always evaluate your eligibility based on a different year eligibility and income. So we will be looking at the income for the following year, if that's the income that it's going to be the lower income. So definitely contact the school that you're attending for that. We have a lot of those right now just because of COVID and the loss of income or decrease in income from parents. That would change your eligibility to become eligible for either grants or more free funds.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then also, as I said, there are a lot of fantastic scholarships out there, especially around December, January. I really start sharing a lot of the local and community scholarships. Several of them I have seen in the past, like the Community Foundation or others, will ask for you to submit that last page of your FAFSA application so that they see that for verification of a need-based scholarship, even if it's in the community. Not all, but some. So to that point, I always think that's a good idea to have that process moving forward.
That's a very good point. Every school has their own institutional scholarships as well. If you've been admitted to a school and you already know you're going to be going there, you can always search for their scholarships and apply for their institutional scholarships as well. A lot of them are need based, a lot of them are merit based, but you want to do that as well. Our scholarship application becomes available the second week in November for next year. So you want to go ahead, if you've been admitted to our school, apply for our institutional scholarships, or they're called foundation scholarships. We have one application is universal for all of our campuses. So you want to submit those to us as soon as possible once we email you that the application is available. But you can also go to any school that you've been admitted to, go to their financial aid office and look for their scholarships so you can apply for them as well.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. All right, Gabriella, thank you so much for meeting with me again and putting together this webinar for our students and family. And then anybody who is still with us live and you want to take a picture of this contact information, I know that we also had a few families that dialed in. So I'm certainly happy to share that with you as well. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much to Gabriella. Once again, I always appreciate you coming on board with us to help us with this process.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.